welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Senator JD Vance.
I don't rule the world. These United States, we're the ones who need it most. Let the rest of the world help us fortune, and let's rebuild America first. Our highways and bridges are falling apart. Who's blessed? Who has been cursed? There's things to be done all over the world, but let's rebuild America first.
God bless you all. Thank you, please. Oh, wow. You guys, it is great to be here. It is great to be in Pennsylvania, and we have got 44 days till we're going to turn this state red, turn the country red, and make Donald Trump the next president. Now we love you all too. Now look, I got a couple people I want to recognize. We have the Berks County Chair, Susan Bernhardt. Where is Susan? Susan, you're doing a great job. Thank you. We have got former congressional candidate and founder of Hope and Coffee, Lisa Schleifer. Where's Lisa? Lisa, thank you. So we've also got, running around here somewhere, my 7-year-old and my 4.5-year-old. So, and they are thrilled to be in Pennsylvania, but they are particularly thrilled to go to the Hershey Park later today. And as a lot of you with kids will know, it's so amazing when you have kids and you see how innate their personalities really are. So the 7-year-old is probably somewhere around here reading a book. He's like his mother. And the 4.5-year-old is much more like his dad. He's probably trying to find a building to burn down or something like that. Just total Asian to chaos. So I apologize. But Vivek, if you're listening, don't do anything crazy, please. We got to win Pennsylvania, and we can't let a 4.5-year-old prevent that from happening. Now, look, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but, Kamala Harris does this interesting thing where the only time she speaks before the American people is when she's got a teleprompter right in front of her. And I think it's because she has no idea what to say unless somebody else is writing her lines for her. Isn't that a disgrace? Now she will, I'll give Kamala Harris a little bit of credit because over the past 50 days, y'all, now don't run me out of town yet. I said I'd give her a little bit of credit. I'd give Kamala Harris a little bit of credit because she's given 2 interviews over 50 days of being the Democratic Party's nominee. Now, I think I've figured out the secret though. The reason Kamala doesn't get very many interviews is because every time she does, I think we pick up about 100,000 votes. So I guess Kamala's attitude is better hide from the American people, but Kamala Harris, there is no hiding from the wisdom of the voters of Pennsylvania, and in 44 days, you're fired. Now, it's so funny. I talk to the president, of course, all the time, and he and I think, figured it out a few days ago. Kamala Harris, she's running from every position that she has ever had. Now, she said she ran on defunding the police, and while she's been vice president, there's been no vice president in this country's history who's more anti-law enforcement. But now she says she didn't mean it. Now, 3.5 years ago, Kamala Harris said that she wanted to ban fracking. And how would that go over for the workers of Pennsylvania? Not very well at all. But now Kamala Harris says, well, she didn't mean it. Three and a half years ago, Kamala Harris suspended deportations. She stopped Donald Trump's wildly successful Remain in Mexico policy, and she radically increased asylum fraud in this country, opening the southern border and flooding communities like this one with deadly fentanyl and a lot of crime. But now, Kamala Harris says, no, I didn't mean to do that. And we figured it out. She can't be trusted. You're exactly right. But I think what I figured out is that Kamala Harris knows that she's not going to win this race, so she's auditioning for my job. And I told the president, sir, you got to be worried because she's going to show up at one of these rallies with a long red tie and a Make America Great Again hat. But here in Pennsylvania and all across our country, we are not going to let Kamala Harris forget that she opened the border, that she went to war with the police, that she tried to ban fracking, and she is fired on November the 5th, and we're not going to let her get away from it. Now, this is our second stop here in Pennsylvania. We got in earlier this morning, and we stopped at a grocery store. And this goes to show you, I love my kids so much. They're so funny, but I brought them along with me. And the reason I brought them along with me is I'm very proud of my 4.5-year-old. Yeah, he's a bit of a wild child, but he and his mom have been doing reading lessons, and they did their 100th reading lesson this morning. So I'm a very proud father, but that's why they're with me. Is one of their rewards is they get to ride around the beautiful state of Pennsylvania with me. Now, we went to a grocery store, and I said, well, another reward is that you can pick anything you want in this grocery store, and I assume, of course, that they'd want a piece of candy. But again, my 7-year-old, he's just like his mother. He's very, very practical. He's what they call a type A personality. And I'm talking about grocery prices, which we'll get to in a second, and the media's sitting there, and my son tugs on my shirt and he says, Dad, we need eggs. And I said, son, when I said you could get anything, I thought maybe you meant like a Snickers bar or something. He said, Dad, you used the last 3 eggs this morning. We got to get eggs. So I'm like, all right, son, we'll get an ice cream sandwich and I will get a dozen eggs. And that's exactly what we did. But, it reminded me, a dozen eggs, almost $4 in the state of Pennsylvania. When Donald Trump was president, you know what a dozen eggs cost in this country? About $1.50. In the state of Pennsylvania, one of the worst, actually, I didn't know this until recently. Y'all have had one of the worst grocery price inflation in the entire country. A gallon of milk costs $4.28. Thanks, Kamala Harris. A dozen eggs costs almost $4. Thanks, Kamala Harris. A price of ground beef went from just shy of $4 a pound to $6 a pound because Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act. And as Kamala Harris, she is, my friends, I haven't been in politics long enough to be as shameless as Kamala Harris and stand before the people of Pennsylvania and America and say on day one, she's going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing that whole time? If she wants to do something to fix the very problem she created, there is nothing stopping her. You get to work right now, Kamala Harris. Stop talking about what you're going to do and actually go out there and do it. Now, it's not just grocery prices. It's everything is more expensive in this country. Americans cannot afford to live a good life in this country because of Kamala Harris's policies. It's crazy. Now think about this. Donald Trump and I believe in a very simple principle, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to get ahead in this country that all of us love. Isn't that simple? That is right, ma'am. That is the American dream. And you know, one of the most critical parts of the American dream is being able to afford a home. And right now, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, homes are skyrocketing. Mortgage interest rates are as high as they've been in a generation, and a lot of young Americans feel like they cannot afford a home in this country, and I think that's disgraceful. One of the reasons why we got to get Donald Trump back in the White House is because we want young Americans to be able to afford to own a stake in this country, and they will when we get Donald Trump back. Now, here's the thing. This is not rocket science, right? Why have homes gotten so expensive? Well, two reasons. Number one, Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote, the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act. That shot interest rates through the roof. And you know, the other thing Kamala Harris did is that her border policies welcomed 25 million illegal aliens into this country. People who shouldn't be here. People who are competing against you and your children to buy the homes that ought by rights go to American citizens. So our message to Kamala Harris is stop giving American homes to foreigners who shouldn't be in this country. Start giving them to American citizens who deserve to be here and ought to be able to afford a stake. Now, unfortunately, my friends, we know that it is not just higher housing prices and higher grocery prices and, yes, overcrowded schools. That's not the only consequences of illegal immigration, thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, because there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of crime committed by people who shouldn't be in this country to begin with. And I just want to, I want to read through this. Now, earlier this year, an illegal immigrant from Guatemala killed a 21-month-old child in Chester County. That's just earlier this year. In 2022, fentanyl, thanks to Kamala Harris's open borders, became the most common source of overdose deaths in this country. Thank you to Kamala Harris, who allowed the Mexican drug cartels to turn our country into a drug trafficking zone. There are a lot of people who are dying of drug overdoses, a lot of lives who've been ruined because of that. And ladies and gentlemen, you know, one of the things I really love about our country, and I believe that every single person in this room would agree with me, is the American dream is not just a dream for people who did everything right all the time. It's an American dream for people who want second chances. And I believe that in this country we can have more second chances if we just get smarter policies. And this is something that is very personal to me, because those two beautiful boys that are running around outside, they have gotten a second chance with their grandmother, my mother, because this is a great and generous country. Now, a lot of you know that I was raised by my grandmother. And the reason I was raised by my grandmother, I called her Mamaw, we love Mamaw, is because my own mom struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of my early life. And I remember being that teenager at my mom's bedside, begging and praying to God that she would wake up from whatever she had taken. And what I worry about is that there are a lot of kids and a lot of grandparents who are having those exact same prayers go unanswered because of the poison that Kamala Harris has let come into this country. Now, I am proud, I am so proud of her, that mom is close to 10 years, coming January, 10 years clean and sober for my mom. And for all of you out there who are dealing with it yourself or know somebody, love somebody who's dealing with it, there is hope on the other side of addiction. There is hope in recovery, but only if we give people that second chance. And we are not going to give the second chances to millions of Americans if we keep on letting those drug cartels use our country as a drug trafficking zone. So our message to those drug cartels, our message to those drug traffickers, our message to everybody who has come into this country illegally is in 6 months, pack your bags because Donald Trump's coming back into office and you're going home. And it's all of these public safety issues. I mean, in this state, property crimes are up 20%. In this state, 12 more minors died from gun violence, thanks again to Kamala Harris's policies. And right now, there are 250,000 illegal aliens in the state of Pennsylvania, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. And that doesn't count all the people who've gotten across unchecked or unaccounted for. So it's probably more like 500,000 illegal aliens in the state of Pennsylvania right now. And how many of us just in this room know a school where they're struggling to give American citizens a good education because the schools are flooded with people who shouldn't even be here? And wouldn't it be nice to have a president who thinks that the first duty is to keep American citizens safe, not people who shouldn't be in this country to begin with? Now that problem, just that immigration problem alone, has cost Pennsylvanians $2.6 billion. That's $300 for every man, woman, and child in this room and all across Pennsylvania. That is totally unacceptable. And you know, one of the things that I really wish, and y'all are so kind and generous, often when I come to events like this, people ask me how I'm doing. And look, I'm doing great. This is the honor of a lifetime to be able to stand up here and ask you for your vote to be the next Vice President of the United States. But I really wish that I could take every single one of you and give you the perspective that I've gotten on this great country over just the last 7 weeks. Because this is a beautiful country, my friends, from the beautiful deserts of Arizona to the mountains of central Pennsylvania. This is a beautiful country. I believe it's the most beautiful country in the whole world. And it's not just that beauty that you see that's surface deep. We have got underneath the ground here in Pennsylvania natural resources that Russia and China would literally kill for. We've got the best workers and the best people. We've got the best historical tradition and cultural traditions anywhere in the world. We can fix this country's problems, my friends. We just got to get better leadership. So I want us to tell Kamala Harris and every single one of the corrupt Washington Democrats who have failed to do their job and protect this state and all 50 states, on November 5th, the American people, the people of Pennsylvania, are going to send a message: you're fired and Donald Trump is coming back to the White House. So of course, I talked to the president quite a bit, and I get a call from the president, not unusual because, you know, we call each other a lot on Sunday, and I was. Is that him? It probably is. So I'm sitting with my 7-year-old boy. We're sitting at home, and the president calls me and he says, JD, they tried to do it again. And I said, they tried to do what, sir? And he said, they tried to shoot me again. And I said, you know, my first reaction, of course, was, well, sir, are you okay? Right? That's what you do. So I said, sir, are you doing okay? And of course he said, yeah, I'm doing fine. And then he said, we've got apparently a heckler there in the back, but we'll get him out of here. Our friend, it's all right. Hey, look, our friend back there wants to pay even higher grocery prices. That's why he's supporting Kamala Harris. But I talked to the president, And the president says, and remember, this is like 5 minutes. This is well before the news became public. The president, this just happened 5 minutes ago, and he says, you know, I'm doing fine, but I'm kind of pissed off because I was about to make a birdie putt on the 6th hole, and they wouldn't let me finish. And I chuckled a little bit. Of course, I'm sitting in Ohio, not in Florida, and I'm more bothered by this than he is. But then it hit me, two things. Number one, isn't that the kind of man we want to be the president of the United States? A guy who takes a bullet and stands up and raises his fist in the air in defiance. A guy who, again, is nearly assassinated and is more worried about not making a birdie putt. Because that shows you who he is under fire, under literal fire. And as much as the media loves to lie about Donald Trump, and as much as Kamala Harris's entire campaign is about lying about Donald Trump, what we want in the Oval Office is a person who is calm and cool under pressure. And that describes Donald Trump to a T, a guy who can take a bullet and still keep his wits about him. You know who we don't want in the Oval Office? A person who is so afraid of the friendly American media that she won't even give a real interview. Because Kamala, if you're too afraid of the American media to give an interview, we cannot trust you to represent us on the world stage and in front of world leaders. Because we all know the most important job of a president, it's not agreeing with you on any substantive policy issue. The most important job of a president is dealing with crisis. And I know who I trust to deal with a crisis. It's Donald J. Trump, the man who has stood calm under fire, not Kamala Harris, who's too afraid of the American media to give an interview. And then, of course, the media is trying to bury this story. Literally 6 days ago, there was a near assassination on a former and future U.S. president, and the American press is more worried about salacious scandals in other states than they are about what's going on right here in Pennsylvania, or the fact that Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. Now, I think that's ridiculous and preposterous, but think about this. What is it that drives the left's hatred of this one person? And I think I figured it out, my friends. The answer is censorship. The reason they keep going after him is because they want to silence him, and they want to silence him permanently. And by the way, they want to silence every single person in this room. That's why, by the way, big tech conspired to silence Americans over all the COVID craziness. That's why big tech still to this day tries to interfere in our elections. And that's why, at this very moment, the Democrats are busy calling anybody who disagrees with Kamala Harris's open border a racist. They're all about silencing their fellow citizens. Now, here's what I think about this, and here's why I think we got to talk about this immigration and border issue every single day. Because I've seen in the small town of Springfield, Ohio, or here in Pennsylvania, there have been cities, small towns that have been overwhelmed with migrants who are brought in by Kamala Harris. And we know exactly the story. We know that it leads to a stress on local services. We know people can't get into the hospital or to the doctor's office. We know that schools don't educate children as well. And we know that it means higher housing and higher grocery prices. That's what Kamala Harris's open border does to small towns and big cities all over our country. But here's what really bothers me about it. It's not just that they've made people's lives worse with this terrible open border. It's that they're going to call you bad names if you dare complain about it. And so our message to Kamala Harris and the Democrats is we're going to keep on complaining about your policies because this is America and we have the right to speak our mind. And our message, our message to Kamala Harris is very simple. We are not bad people for thinking that you should not flood millions of illegal aliens into this country. We are not bad people for thinking that the drug cartels shouldn't be allowed to bring fentanyl into our country. You are not a bad person for having the courage to defy Kamala Harris and say no more of this garbage. Kamala Harris is a bad person for letting this happen to our country in the first place. Now, we're going to take a few questions from the media, but before we do, I want to just leave you. That's okay. You don't have to boo them. Some of them are very fine people. But I want to leave you with one final thought, because I think it ties together how broken Kamala Harris's policies are. It ties together what Pennsylvania is dealing with at this very moment, and it also highlights how much better we could be in this country with better leadership. We are sitting in the state of Pennsylvania. You all in your state are sitting on what can only be described as the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. Again, when I talk about Russia and China having resources, or they would kill for the resources that we have just in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, Kamala Harris has pursued an energy policy where she'd rather buy oil and gas from tin pot dictators all over the world. I say we buy it from Pennsylvania workers right here in our own territory. But if we do that, it's not just going to be good for the Pennsylvania energy workers, though it's certainly going to be good for them. If we make more of our own energy, it's going to drive down the cost of manufacturing. That means making more stuff in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and all over our country. It's going to drive down the cost of food. That means more farmers can afford to stay on family farms, and we all can afford to buy good food at the grocery store. It means that everybody, whether you're rich or poor, can afford to turn on your heating in the depths of a cold winter night. It means peace and prosperity for our people, and the fact that Kamala Harris is going to war against Pennsylvania energy instead of fighting for Pennsylvania energy means that we cannot let her anywhere near the Oval Office. So, with gratitude for every single person in this room, for all the hard work we're all going to do together, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and let's have some questions from the media now. God bless you all. It's great to be with you. So, thank you all, please. So, we're going to try to take a few questions here, but what I'd like to do is start with local reporters, and then if we've got time afterwards, we'll take some questions from the national folks too. First question, the lights are too bright for me to see you, but I'll hope that you got a microphone back there. Just shout your question at me. Sir, could you repeat the question, please? Just be loud if you could. Speak directly into the microphone because it's hard to hear you up here.
I understand. Trump has proposed multiple tax cuts, and we have a national debt that's more than $35 trillion. How would a Trump-Vance administration reduce the impact of this loss of revenue?
Well, look, first of all, Somebody just gave me an answer. One thing we're going to do to lower the cost of goods, but also to reduce that deficit, is drill, baby, drill. And Pennsylvania is going to benefit as much as anybody. But look, I am glad you asked the question about taxes, and I'll talk about revenue in a second. But the tax issue really does illustrate the difference between Kamala Harris's policies and Donald Trump's policies. Kamala Harris is going around every single day promising that working Americans are going to get a tax increase, and also promising that she's going to reward corporations that ship American jobs overseas. That is the sum total of her tax policy. You know what Donald Trump's tax policy is? He wants to give hardworking Americans a tax cut, and he wants to penalize corporations that are shipping our jobs overseas. Let's build and make things right here in America and reward the companies that do that. Now, when you do that, when you reward American businesses for creating American jobs as opposed to Chinese jobs in China, you lower the deficit because that means you have fewer people collecting and more people working and paying into the system. The other thing you're going to do to lower the deficit is to cut out the Medicare, Social Security fraud that we see coming from illegal aliens every single day in this country. We believe that we need to preserve and protect Social Security and Medicare. Kamala Harris wants to bankrupt Medicare and Social Security by giving it to illegal aliens. Is that a good idea, Pennsylvania? And it's not just Social Security and Medicare that the illegal aliens are taking advantage of. We've got housing. We've got numerous types of welfare. We've got numerous types of cash assistance that people who shouldn't even be here are taking advantage of. So I absolutely believe that we can cut taxes on hardworking Americans. The way that we do it is stop paying out hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal aliens who shouldn't even be here, and that's what Donald Trump and I are going to do. Next question.
Hi, Senator Vance. I just wanted to ask you, last weekend you talked about creating stories so the media pays attention to American people's suffering. But when those
Could you start at the beginning and then repeat the question a little louder?
Last week you talked about creating stories so the media pays attention to people's suffering. But when those stories aren't necessarily verified by fact, are you saying those things because you're really just trying to gin up the base? Or are you, and I guess my question is, are you guys still really trying to win over voters that might not already be in your camp?
Look, what? Well, that's my first response to the question is boo. That's exactly what we're doing here. But look, the media has lied and misrepresented this, and so, of course, is the Kamala Harris campaign, because Kamala Harris, notice, she's not running on substance, she's just running on dishonesty, because she doesn't have a record she can defend herself. What I said is that we create media stories. In other words, we focus the people's attention on what's already going on. Does anybody really think, I challenge you, go to Springfield, Ohio, which has been overwhelmed by 20,000 Haitian immigrants. Go to any community that's been overwhelmed by Kamala Harris's illegal alien policies and tell me that these are stories made up by politicians. These are stories that people have been living for months or in some cases years. The only thing that Donald Trump and I did is highlighted and focused on them so that you guys would stop ignoring the American people. And by the way, I think it's a little bit rich that the media wants to aggressively fact check every single thing that the residents of Springfield are talking about. These people who have been suffering for months or even years. In Springfield, Ohio, people are getting evicted from their apartments and from their homes to make way for people who shouldn't be in this country to begin with. That is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. And it's happening because of Kamala Harris's policies, and a lot of the media and Kamala Harris were ignoring it until we started talking about it. Well, you know what my job is as the future Vice President of the United States, and my current job is My current job is, as a United States Senator representing the people of Ohio, is to listen to American citizens and fight for them, and that's what I'm going to keep on doing every single day. Next question.
Thank you for taking questions from us. I have a question for you about polling. I'm wondering how much weight you and the former president are putting into any of the recent polls that show Harris up in Pennsylvania. Obviously, in 2016, the polling didn't seem to reflect who won the election. So I'm wondering how much weight you and the former president are putting into these polls, and what you would tell voters who are watching those polls.
So very, very good. That's a very important question, actually. Here's how much weight I put in those polls, and I want to be as precise as I possibly can: 0. That is how much weight I put in those polls. And look, we have, I believe, in our campaign, the very best pollsters working for us, and trust me, we feel extremely good about Pennsylvania and the whole country. Just let me give you a very precise example. I remember the fake media polls in my Ohio Senate race that told us that we were going to lose, and this wasn't in September, this was October, that I was going to lose my Ohio Senate race. And then I had a pollster who said, you know what, we're going to win, and we're going to win by 7 points. And then I won by 7 points. I trust that pollster more than I trust the fake media pollsters. But I think it's important, look, we shouldn't trust any poll, whether they're good or bad for us. And trust me, there are a lot of good polls for Donald Trump right now. The reason is simple. The polling doesn't matter. Your voice matters. And we got to get out there and make sure you show your voice. And I really do believe that there are, let me take it back to 2020. I remember there was a poll that said that Donald Trump was going to lose Wisconsin by 17 points. You may not remember that, but I pay attention to this stuff very closely. They said that Wisconsin was going to be lost by 17 points. It's not just wrong. The purpose of that poll is so that people who support Donald Trump in Wisconsin don't get out there and vote. So whether you're a swing voter or whether you're pro-Trump or whether you're maybe leaning Trump, I don't care how you fall in this election. Don't let the polls convince you not to show up and have your voice heard. Go and vote. It's the only way we're going to fire Kamala Harris. Next question.
Senator Vance, thank you so much for joining us in Leesport today. Really appreciate your time. So the agriculture trading industry, of course, is the backbone of Pennsylvania's economy. Is that right?
I think that's right.
So the Shapiro administration recently invested more than $10 million in an innovation grant program to help Pennsylvania farmers. What would you do to help Pennsylvania farmers?
Well, the first thing that I would do to help Pennsylvania farmers is to cut out the anti-energy policies that make it impossible to operate a farm in the state of Pennsylvania. When I talk to Pennsylvania farmers, what they always tell me is one of the most important, maybe the most significant cost in their business and their farm is energy, because you can't run a farm without diesel fuel. And a lot of us may not know this, but some of the most important fertilizers that our farmers use actually come from natural gas, good Pennsylvania natural gas. So if you have a president like Kamala Harris, who is actually making energy more expensive, she is waging war on Pennsylvania farmers, and that is in fact what she's doing every single day. That's why we got to get her out of there and replace her with Donald J. Trump, who loves our farmers and loves our energy workers. But look, I also think that we absolutely have to invest in Pennsylvania farmers and invest in innovation in our farms. We've got the most innovative farming sector anywhere in the world, but it's not going to stay that way unless we stay ahead of the curve. So it's good to invest in our farmers, but the most important thing is to cut down on energy costs. Here's one more thing I'll say about farming. Kamala Harris came out with this policy that a lot of people didn't pay attention to, but what she talked about is taxing people's land and taxing people's business, not when they sell them, but before they sell them. If you want to destroy the family farm in the United States of America, you will do exactly what Kamala Harris's tax proposal is. And if you want to save family farms in this state and everywhere across the country, we need Donald Trump's tax policies, which are good for workers, good for farmers, and good for everybody else. Next question.
Senator Vance, you're set to debate Minnesota Governor Tim Walz in 10 days. What are the topics you're hoping to discuss during this debate, and would you be open to a second debate depending on how the first one goes?
Well, first of all, I'd love to have a second debate. We've actually offered Tim Walz a second debate, and they've totally rejected it. But look, I actually think that you should have to earn this job. Like, think about this. I'm asking all of you and everybody watching on TV, the whole country, to do something that really should put a person in awe. I'm asking you to make me the Vice President of the United States. And to do that is an awesome and frankly a very humbling thing. But the only way to go and do that is to earn people's vote, not to hide from them in a basement, which is what Kamala Harris is doing. I cannot imagine running the campaign that she's run. She wants to be in the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world, and she hides from the people that she wants to lead. I think it's disgraceful. Me and Donald Trump, we get out there as much as possible. We talk to everybody we possibly can because we respect the American people enough to earn their vote. And look, I'm looking forward to the debate. I'm sure Governor Walz is looking forward to the debate, but maybe not. But look, we're going to get out there and we're going to talk to the American people about policy. What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about how can Kamala Harris run away from her record. She pretends that she's been nowhere near the White House for the last 3.5 years. She's the sitting Vice President of the United States. She says that she wants to do a lot of things on day one. She's the sitting Vice President of the United States. And I happen to think that, we should think of an election like a job interview. A person who refuses to do interviews and a person who refuses to acknowledge her own failures and a person who refuses to run on her record, we're not going to give that person a promotion. We're going to get her out of Washington, send her back to San Francisco where she belongs. And I hate to say it, we're running short on time, but I'll do one more question and leave you with a final thought, and then we'll have to hit the road. But one more question.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for taking my question. I wanted to get your response to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine's opinion piece in the New York Times yesterday, where he said he was saddened by how you and President Trump continue to repeat claims that lack evidence and disparage the legal Haitian immigrants living in Springfield. And he said that he felt that it dilutes
Well, look, first of all, Mike DeWine has endorsed the Trump-Vance ticket, and we are a big tent party, and we're going to have people who have disagreements, and that's okay. You know what the difference is between Kamala Harris's Democrats and Donald Trump's Republican Party is we're okay with disagreement. We're okay with it so long as you've got common sense. We're the party of common sense. Kamala Harris, if you don't support her policies that want to destroy the Pennsylvania energy sector, or if you don't support her policies that want to open the border, she'll try to censor you, she'll try to shut you up. That's not what Donald Trump and I are doing. So let's have the conversation. We're big enough for it. Look, think about this. Think about our party, and I'm sure there's a diversity of opinions, even just in this room, about the people I'm going to name. But look, we've got Nikki Haley, Brian Kemp, Donald Trump, Bobby Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard because we're the party of common sense. That's it. Now, in that spirit, I'm thrilled to have Governor DeWine's support, but there is one thing that he is just wrong about in that argument. The 20,000 Haitian migrants who come to Springfield are part of hundreds of thousands of Haitian migrants, part of 25 million illegal aliens in this country. Now here, when the media says that people are here legally, here's what they mean. That Kamala Harris has granted mass amnesty to millions of illegal aliens. Now, I happen to think that what Kamala Harris has done is not just wrong, it is illegal. So when Kamala Harris uses an illegal action to give amnesty to aliens, that does not make them legal immigrants, that makes them illegal immigrants unless you've lost all common sense. So, I'm going to keep on talking about illegal immigration. I'm going to keep on talking about how Kamala Harris doesn't have the authority to grant mass amnesty. And I'm going to keep on talking about the fact that we need to close down that border and send Kamala Harris back to San Francisco where she belongs. Now let me... Now, my friends, I want to leave you with one final thought. And one of my favorite Senate colleagues, he will, I've only been in politics for 2 years, but I've seen him give a speech where he says, I want you, meaning everybody in the audience, to get out there and vote 10 times. And people get a little uncomfortable. They say, well, we're Republicans, we only vote once. Here's how you can legally vote 10 times. You take yourself to the polls and you make sure 9 other people go right along with you. And that... So, I want everybody right now, get out your phones right now, take out your phones, and take a photo of me sitting up here, and go on social media and post a photo, whether you use Facebook or Instagram or X or Twitter, whatever you use. Get out there and post it. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to post the photo, and I want you to talk about why. Tell people why you're voting for Donald Trump. That's number one. And number two, I want you to find at least 9 of your friends. Make sure they make a plan to vote. Make sure you find a way to help them get to the polls, and do it however makes the most sense for you. Because we've got early voting, we've got mail-in balloting, and of course we've got election day voting. But here's the thing, and we got to be honest about this because the Democrats have done better at this than us, is they get so many votes by mail and they get so many early votes that they start out with a massive advantage. And by the way, in Pennsylvania, we're doing a hell of a lot better in 2024 than we did in 2020. I'm telling you, the numbers look good. But we got to keep it up because look, every single person that I know has a story where they plan to go vote on election day. And maybe it's a big presidential election, maybe it's a city council election, whatever the election is. And then something comes up, right? Mom gets sick and you got to take her to the doctor. One of your kids has to come home from school. You have a later night at work than you expected to do. So we gotta deal with all the unanticipated things that come up. And the best way to do it is to get out there, bank those votes. And here's the message. If we do it, we are gonna win. We're gonna win. And I want the message from Pennsylvania to be, we're going red, the country is going red, and we are bringing back the common sense leadership of Donald J. Trump. God bless you guys, God bless your families, and God bless Pennsylvania. It's great to be with you.